heard a story about this house. At sunset, just as night was falling, there was an old, dilapidated house. Clearly used to be a grand mansion. Now, though, completely fallen down. Spanish moss overtaking the upstairs balcony. Windows gaping like open mouths. A rocking chair still on the front porch, still rocking back and forth in the wind. A rusty gate creaking on the hinge. I heard a story about this house. At sunset, just as night was falling, there was an old, dilapidated house. Clearly used to be a grand mansion. Now, though, completely fallen down. Spanish moss overtaking the upstairs balcony. Windows gaping like open mouths. A rocking chair still on the front porch, still rocking back and forth in the wind. A rusty gate creaking on the hinge. I heard a story about this house. At sunset, just as night was falling, there was an old, dilapidated house. Clearly used to be a grand mansion. Now, though, completely fallen down. Spanish moss overtaking the upstairs balcony. Windows gaping like open mouths. A rocking chair still on the front porch, still rocking back and forth in the wind. A rusty gate creaking on the hinge. I heard a story about this house. A family from New Jersey saw it, liked it, thought they could rebuild it, and then that's exactly what they did. On the first night, the kids were sleeping in the upstairs room, whose windows open, letting the southern breezes come right through. The moon poured light in through the open windows. The kids were sound asleep when, suddenly, there were noises from the attic. The two children sat bolt upright in bed, eyes wide open. They came screaming down the stairs. They did not stop until they were out in the front lawn. Mommy, Daddy, we heard these horrible noises coming from the attic. Their parents said, "Oh, silly kids, I'm sure it was just an old house settling." In the morning, the parents took a look up in the attic. Clearly, no one had been there for decades. There was nothing to be seen, nothing to be found. There was nothing to be seen, nothing to be found. The second night, the same sound, this time loud, echoing all the way down to the master bedroom. This time, the entire family sat bolt upright. A rush of cold air enveloped the family, swirled around them twice, and flew down the stairs. And downstairs the family flew with it, screaming as they went. All the way down the stairs, the family ran, screamed, stopped dead in their tracks. The door was locked from the inside. I heard a story about this house.
If I may, I would like to tell you a true story. A story about a house that had a bad room, what they call in Ireland a bad room. It had an atmosphere. People were loath to go into it. They didn't wish to have anything to do with it. And if people heard about this room and they wanted to go and see it, the people of the house would say, "Please don't go near the room. And if you do go near the room, always go with something because it has some sort of fatal attraction to draw those people in. And people would open the door and let people look into the room. And the sense of attraction to that room was like a magnetic pull. They would want to go in. And that is why the other person was there, always to stop them. And then one young, foolish man decided against all advice that he would spend the night in the room. And people pleaded with him, scolded him, shouted at him, screamed, fought him. And he said, no, I will spend the night in the room to rid us all of this superstitious rubbish. And he went in that room. And the door, without any human being touching, closed behind them. And they all waited. And they all waited until about 6 o'clock in the morning. And from that room, it was the most horrendous, soul-destroying scream. They all rushed out of the room, and they opened the door. There was nothing there at all. No sign of the owner, except a pungent smell of animal and brimstone mixed together. And the story was printed in the paper and people came to hear about it. And eventually it got to the ears of one of the great Jesuits, who was an exorcist. And he decided that he would go to this room and he would attempt to exorcise this evil, this presence, this prince of darkness, whatever it might be, that's in that room. And again the people pleaded. They said no, and I shall do it. And he arrived, entered the room, and the door closed behind him. And the people sat downstairs by a fire. They waited. And the clock, large grandfather clock, ticked away the time. Why? From upstairs they could hear the priest praying. They smelled the incense. And at about 4:30 in the morning, they looked at the dog who was asleep by the fire. And in his sleep he had begun to growl. And as they looked at him, the hackles on the back of the dog began to rise. And he gave out the most baleful of hung-like howls. And then upstairs they heard the scream.
There's a house in a terraced street in Ponders End, North London, where the events of the past 2 months have baffled all who've heard about them and scared the life out of those who've been directly involved. One of the 2 police officers sent to investigate made the following remarkable statement about what he heard and saw in this room. There were 4 distinct taps on the wall, and then silence. About 2 minutes later, I heard more tapping from a different room. The other police constable checked the walls and the taps, but could find nothing to explain it. The eldest son of the family pointed to a chair next to the sofa. I then saw the chair slide across the floor. It moved approximately 3 to 4 feet, and then came to rest. I checked the chair, but could find nothing to explain. Find nothing to explain.
The entity itself has been very, very violent at times. The furniture moving, the furniture being thrown upside down. In fact, one night I was standing here, there were about 11 or 12 people in the room in front of the settee, and the settee went straight up in the air and turned upside down, right in front of me, no more than a foot away from me.
What happened in this bedroom?
Well, I heard a noise downstairs. I come up, and there was the eldest girl on the floor, but the other one was missing. So I look under this bed, I look under this one, and as I stand up, I see it. There she is, across this radio, one leg in the air, and her head hanging down.
No. One for no and two for yes. Are you a male spirit? That's two. You are a male spirit. Did you used to live in this house? You did. Was it more than 50 years ago? Yes. Do you enjoy upsetting this family? You do. Well now, will you please go away? Because I think you've had enough of your jokes. You won't go away. But I would like you to go away, and go away because I think you've been upsetting this family long enough, and it's time you went away. You understand me? Please go away.
Tapes can of course be faked. 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 In every story of things that go bump in the night, there are two possibilities. One, that it's a hoax. Two, that there's something going on beyond the grasp of the human mind. If this is a hoax, it means that some of the 17 people who've seen things have been playing an elaborate and twisted joke on the others. If it isn't a hoax, it means that either those 17 people have all been having hallucinations, including the police, or this is the best documented ghost story of all time.
I can wish. I can wish.
No devices, no Wonderbox, no apps, no radio, just a silent room.
passengers look out through their windows at these old stations, dark, forgotten, suspended in time. They call the Geist of Bahnhof. Great name. Strange things have happened here. Strange sounds. Shadows shifting in the corners of my eyes.
Anneliese was born in Bavaria, West Germany, in 1952. She came from a very devout Catholic family, and they regularly visited church together. At the age of 16, Anneliese experienced her first seizure at school. She lost consciousness, and that night she woke to an overwhelming feeling of fear and dread. Unable to move, she later came to believe that that was the moment that the demons entered her body. A year later, after suffering a similar episode, her mother took her to their GP, Dr. Luthi. She was diagnosed with psychosis caused by epilepsy. By 1973, Anneliese became depressed and withdrawn. She began to hear knocking sounds emanating from inside her closet and on her walls and ceiling. She returned to Dr. Luthi, and there she told him that she was having hallucinations. She said that she could see the devil's face everywhere she looked, and hear demon voices whispering in her ears. According to Anneliese's mother, Dr. Luthi advised them to see a priest, because he believed that Anneliese was suffering from a demonic possession, an allegation that Dr. Luthi later denied. She was diagnosed as neurotic by a psychiatrist, and her epilepsy was confirmed, and by the summer of 1975, she was suffering from extreme insomnia. She refused to visit church anymore, insisting that even trying to enter through the doors was just too physically painful. She would rip her clothes from her body and lash out at her parents and her sisters in fits of rage. Anneliese continued to hallucinate, seeing the faces of demons superimposed over the faces of family members. In between these intense outbursts, Anneliese would become severely suicidal. She also began to eat less and less. Her family became convinced that she was suffering from a demonic possession, and they sought the help of Father Alt to arrange an exorcism. On September 24, 1975, Father Renz performed the first exorcism rite. Over a period of 67 sessions, 42 of these sessions were recorded, and these audio tapes are intensely disturbing to hear. During these sessions, Anneliese revealed that she was possessed by 6 demons. She would scream, and her body would contort when she was sprinkled with holy water. By May 1976, the sessions had become even more horrific. Anneliese was now refusing to eat anything. She had started to self-harm and had to be restrained because she bit holes in the walls and smashed her head through the window. Silence finally fell over the house on the morning of the 1st of July, 1976, and Annalisa was finally at peace. She died from dehydration, starvation, and sheer exhaustion from the torture that her body had been put through. At the time of her death, her body was in a horrific state. Her knees were smashed and broken. She weighed just 68 pounds. She had open sores all over her body, 2 black eyes, and her mouth and nose were raw. A criminal investigation into her death began, and her parents, Father Arnold and Father Renz, were charged with negligent homicide. The trial lasted for over a year, and the prosecution insisted that Annalisa was suffering from a mental illness, and that medical intervention should have been sought to avoid the resulting starvation of Annalisa. However, the defense insisted that Annalisa had the right to refuse medical treatment, and that they had eyewitness testimony and recordings that would prove that Annalisa was suffering from demonic possession. The judge found the defendants guilty and sentenced all 4 of them to 6 months in prison, which was later suspended. Annalisa Michael died on the 1st of July, 1976, at the age of 23. Her frail body had endured the physical trauma of 67 exorcism rituals. The judge found the defendants guilty and sentenced all 4 of them to 6 months in prison, which was later suspended. Annalisa Michael died on the 1st of July, 1976, at the age of 23. Her frail body had endured the physical trauma of 67 exorcism rituals. The judge found the defendants guilty and sentenced all 4 of them to 6 months in prison, which was later suspended. Annalisa Michael died on the 1st of July, 1976.
And also there is another very interesting form of magic, the wax dimension. Now, that road is a very secret thing, but an image is made of the object of the person's aversion or hate. Made usually of ordinary wax. If the hour of darkness or most easily gone to bed, the practitioner will carve this thing or mold this thing from ordinary wax just as usual, as near as possible to the feature form of the object of his or her aversion. One of the sympathetic methods with which the victim introduced the link is strengthened when the victim is made aware of what could happen and believes in the power of the threat. What is the nature of this power?
You know, you've got to know it. You can't sort of say, look, it's here, I've got it. It's not like that.
This woman could not or would not define her powers.
Señor de las sombras y de los abismos, yo, Mayra, diosa de la brujería sacrificada hace más de 300 años, vuelvo a renacer en la tierra para invocar tu protección. Manifiéstate esta vez. se nos propicia. Fecha en la que debemos ofrecer sacrificios al Señor de las tinieblas. De no ser así, la cólera del Señor por quien existimos acabará con nosotros.
"37% of Americans believe in haunted houses. And I wonder how many of them have been in one, and how many of them have been in danger." Haunted by an evil spirit. I was 25 at the time, and I was living in a tiny house behind someone else's house in Los Angeles. And one night I was sitting there, and I got this really spooky feeling. Kind of a feeling like you're being watched, but no one was there except my 2 dogs. And I thought, okay, it's my imagination. But the feeling just kept getting worse. And I started to feel this pressure in my chest, sort of like the feeling when you get bad news, but it started to sink lower and lower. It almost hurt. And over the course of that week, this feeling got worse and worse, and I started to become convinced that something was there in my little guest house taunting me. Every day I'd come home, this feeling got so bad that, I mean, I'm laughing at it now, but I would sit there in bed and I would cry every night. And the feeling on my chest got worse and worse. It was physically painful. And I even went to a psychiatrist. And I started to hear these sounds, this whoosh, kind of whisper, like something passing through me. And I called my best friend, Claire. She's very open-minded, and she said, "I don't think you're crazy. I think you just need to do a cleansing ritual." I went and I bought sage, and I had never done this before, so set the sage on fire, waved it about. But the feeling stayed, nothing got better, And then I started to think, okay, well now this thing's probably just laughing at me because, it hasn't left, and I probably just look like this impotent, powerless thing that couldn't get it to go away. You don't live here. I live here. You don't live here.
Over in the Soviet Union that year, a group of 10 explorers decided to set out on a challenging hiking expedition in a freezing and mountainous area of Russia. When the expedition group fails to touch base after several weeks, a rescue mission is set up to try and find them. When the mission finally discovers what happened to the explorers, they are horrified. Because of diary entries and camera rolls that were discovered in the tent of the group, we're able to trace their tiny movements. Over a month after the Atlas group departed on the 26th of February, part of the rescue mission discovered a heavily damaged tent. The tent was slashed open from the inside, and in it lie personal belongings such as documents, diaries, food and warm clothes. The rescuers discovered a trail of footprints leading towards the edge of a nearby forest. They discovered the remainders of a fire and the bodies of two members of the mission. Both men lied beneath a large pine tree, wearing just their underwear and without any footwear. But the morbid surprises didn't end there. Between the camp and the pine tree, the bodies of 3 more members were discovered. All 3 were barefoot as well. How did they die? Why were all of them scarcely clothed considering the freezing weather? On the 4th of May, the remaining bodies were discovered on a 4-meter layer of snow in the ravine in the woods about 75 meters away from the pine tree where the first bodies were found. Now, this discovery and post-mortem examination was not just unusual, but outright shocking. 3 of the bodies showed signs of grievous bodily harm. The body of Thibaut Blinot sustained severe skull fractures, and the bodies of Dubinina and Solotado showed signs of severe internal chest damage. Dubinina's tongue was missing, seemingly its mouth. In addition, 2 bodies had their eyeballs missing, and Dubinina, aside from missing her tongue, also missed her lips. It was a bizarre discovery that put the case of missing students in a whole different light. The tents were cut open from the inside, so the group had left their tents voluntarily, perhaps because of something that they did. But why not put on any clothing? And those that wore clothing didn't wear their own, but random pieces of clothes from their peers were wrapped around their limbs. And it made even less sense that one of the bodies was wearing just one shoe. They were all very experienced in harsh weather conditions, the outskirts of the Soviet Union. So, if anything, that made the case more bizarre. The investigators found no logical explanation for what happened to the explorers. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most haunting, unsolved mysteries in history.
Now, I don't claim to be an expert in anything related to the paranormal field, but I do have a background in photography and an extensive background in audio and video as well. And I like to think that I do know a couple things, and when given the opportunity, I really enjoy sharing some of my knowledge with you guys. So with that being said, I'm going to show you how to take some photographs of ghosts.
Most images of ghosts can be explained quite rationally, mostly by long exposures, double exposures, and lightnings. While I'm not saying all photographs of ghosts are fake, you can use the techniques I'm about to show you to get some spookily similar results. This effect works by combining two different types of exposures into one. Start with a long time exposure. Any exposure longer than 1/60th of a second will make moving objects appear as a bit of a blur. You then add a flash exposure by flashing the subject with a flash gun at speed light fired anywhere within 5-minute exposure. When used on its own, a flash exposure will freeze the subject, but when used within a long time exposure, the subject will still retain the blurring of the time exposure, and the flash exposure will appear slightly transparent. And every time you fire a flash gun, you will get another flash exposure. When you combine both flash and long time exposures, you'll get an in-camera ghost effect. When this works, the camera flash goes off roughly 16,000 per second. So we can account for the exposure on that with the camera's iris, and that means we can leave the camera shutter open for as long as we want. This means the subject is blurred but frozen. So in the end, I opened the camera for 5 minutes. Press the shutter and
mum died in October 1982. On anniversary of her death, on her birthday, Mother's Day, there's me and my children and my sister go to the crematorium where her ashes are, read the book of remembrance, leave flowers, go to the place where her ashes are buried, write the name, my dad's name, and give up the bush. It's something we always do, it's habit with us now. It's a ritual sort of thing with us. Well, we all thought we loved her. We all loved her very much, and she always said if we ever lived again. The kids really loved her, especially our little. She really loved her, she was very close to her. First time Nicola saw the ghost of my mum about 2 years after she died, and she was home poorly from school. And I'd gone over to school to pick the little boy up at home time. Said, "You look like you've seen a ghost." She turned around and she said, "I have."
Thought she was cracking some sort of joke, and I didn't find it funny, because I have. And yeah, of course I have. So I've seen the ghost. Because I saw my girlfriend. Of course I saw her, yeah. She was big with the imagination. She didn't believe me then. I had to get out all going on at her all day. One night.
Went to tea time.
And then I told her what she had on. I thought it was a dress. I don't know what a shower looks like, so I thought it was a dress. Pink. Like quite a light shade. Well, it wasn't really, it was like a fuchsia pink dress, and she had two crucifixes on the chest, and one was bigger than the other.
There was one that was on a chain, but one was just laid on her chest. And she said that she saw one hanging, and nothing there. And Ronnie, me and my sister, saw my mother the night before her funeral in Chapel Arrest. So there's no way she knew, because we never even talked about it after. So that's what really convinced me. And the pink shroud. There's no way she knew about it.
She just keeps popping up, and I don't expect to touch friends, but sometimes it really does scare me. First time I saw her, I thought, I'm going crazy. Something wrong here. Really sad.
First time I heard it, I thought, yeah, pull the other one. Because she's usually joking to me, Nicola. So, when she told me what she was wearing, I went down to ask my mum. And she said, yeah, what's you, and that convinced me.
Are you pleased to see her?
Yeah, I am. Because it just feels like it's like she's still alive, do you know what I mean? It's like she's still alive.
What really went on there? We only have this.
Thing that happened to me about 16 years ago. At Bachelor's Grove? At Bachelor's Grove, and it actually ended up on the front page of the Chicago Tribune. And none of us talked about it. 10 of us went out there, 3 in one car, 7 in another car. And we went out there, and it was so dark, you know how that entrance has the trees just overlap each other. And it was so dark in that access road. We got about 30 feet in, and all of a sudden everybody else halted. And one of the cars was an old Hudson, and we decided we'd back in. So out everybody goes, and we backed in. and Richard, we bagged in, and we were in high school at the time. 10 kids aged anywhere from 15 to 18, and we saw lights. And this was the first time at that particular site that any of us had ever gone, but we'd heard about this for years. We backed in and went as far as we could because there's some logs going across the road at a certain point, and we saw some lights in the graveyard, in the cemetery, and we did have a couple of flashlights, and one of the guys flashed his light, and we saw some movement. It could have been our imagination, but whatever. We saw some movement. 10 of us walking as tightly as we could. You can imagine that. 10 guys walking as close as maybe 4 people naturally would walk together. We went over there, and there was a coffin set afire. And this was spring of '65, I believe it was, but it was on the front page of the Chicago Tribune. And we went out there to the graveyard, and one of the guys was saying, "This is where I saw that guy disappear." And when he flashed the light over there was like 7 out of the 10 that saw something there, and 3 of us weren't paying attention. I have to admit that I'm one of the 3 that really wasn't watching when the guy just haphazardly shone a light to indicate where he saw some movement when we first came up, and the 7 swear that they saw something, and there were 2 or 3 markers knocked down, and it could have been just random vandalism or whatever it was. And then shortly we were joined by another car that just happened to come out there. We didn't know these people from Adam. There's 2 guys and 2 girls who also had heard some stories. We saw the lights, and we went over to the coffin that was burning. We told them what we'd seen. The 2 new couples said that they had seen movement also. Thing that happened to me about 15, 16 years ago. At Baxter's Grove? At Baxter's Grove. It actually ended up on the front page of the Chicago Tribune. Thing that happened to me about 15, 16 years ago. At Baxter's Grove? At Baxter's Grove. It actually ended up on the front page of the Chicago Tribune. Thing that happened to me about 15, 16 years ago. At Baxter's Grove? At Baxter's Grove. It actually ended up on the front page of the Chicago Tribune.
There was another girl he should have chosen. Now at 40 he realized this, though without undue bitterness, for he blamed himself. His wife's money had made his career possible. This particular day had been passed in strenuous exercise. His body, he admits, was overtired perhaps, but his mind, at any rate, was resting delightfully. He was reading a story of crime over the fire. Delicious relaxation, he called it. The room was dim. Only the reading lamp turned on. Facing him in the wall was a long pier glass. The book, It Doesn't Pay, was the life of a burglar told by himself. Black, if memory serves me, the author. And he was near the end. In his mind, as he read the last chapter, stretched a picture of the man's whole life. Not actually realized perhaps, but lying there in perspective.